ladies and gentlemen. I think we make a start. It's 9 o'clock. Here am I. Welcome. And any apologies? We've got an apology from Councillor Roy. Any further apologies?
Happy to move the apologies be accepted, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. I understand Robert's you're zooming in. All connected there. You can hear us all right?
I can, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Declaration of interests. Any declarations of interest at all? Not. Public forum, petitions and deputations. I'm not aware of any. Confirmation of minutes. We've all been provided with the minutes.
I'll move.
Thank you. Thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. I understand there's no questions. Chairman and councillors' reports. I don't have a report. Any councillors report at all? If not, we'll move on. General Manager and Strategy and Planning and Engagement. That's item 1.
And item 1 is the policy and planning development work program for improving our external agency reports, which I'm going to hand to Lucy, to the policy and planning manager, to take you through.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So a little bit of a light agenda today, but that's not an indication of how much work we've got on, obviously. So I wanted to talk to you a little about through the update. One thing that's moving really quickly that I think you'll all be interested in is the mediation. So the proposed Southland Water and Land Plan, as you know, is heading into topic B, mediation. We are already starting to resolve some discrete matters, and that's being done by direct negotiations with parties and 274s. So we've started with B7, topic B7, which is kind of a raft of little nitpicky things, remaining provisions, some stuff regarding burning and heritage, and as I say, we're able to be directly negotiating a number of those points at the moment. Formal mediation, we got confirmation just yesterday, late yesterday, from the court that the timetable we proposed has been confirmed, with a couple of caveats, but we are heading into formal mediation week commencing the 29th of March. There will be 6 weeks of mediation between then and the end of May, and that will be spread across the remaining 6 topics for topic B. So I'm happy to share that timetable with yourselves. It's in a minute that the court has issued to us, so it's not in any way privileged. The commissioners are really keen that we don't do 5-day weeks of mediation, so it'll be either 3 or 4-day weeks, but we will be traversing the remaining provisions at pace. So there might be a couple of days pushed out into June. Both the parties for Ngaitahu and Fish and Game had some availability issues with the timetable, so the court has given them until the end of next week to come up with some alternatives. But the commissioners were very clear that the dates that we have put into the timetable are locked. They've got a lot on, and they're very comfortable with where the timetable is sitting. So as I said, formal mediation starts week commencing the 29th of March. We'll be resolving 3 topics in that week. That's B7, any remaining points from B7, which we're thinking will be at approximately a quarter of a day or half a day. And then we'll be heading into B1 and B2. B1 is water takes and relates to policies 20, 25 and 42, as well as a couple of our appendices. And the B2 topic, which will be the end of that week, is water quality and discharges, and will probably take the bulk of that week, a couple of days probably. All of the mediation requires a huge amount of prep. The court's been very directive about the steps that it wants us to take in advance of heading into formal mediation, and that those have already started. So analysis of the MPS and the NES is required, and we've had to start circulating those documents already. So we're kind of 6 weeks out, the clock starts ticking. So happy to answer any questions specifically on mediation. If you'd like, I can take it forward.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So
the location of mediation, it is here in Southland?
And in Invercargill, yeah.
And has there been any participants drop out, any further participants drop out with having reviewed what has come out of obviously the NES and the NPS, so only Port New Zealand?
Yep, so no parties have completely dropped out except for Hort. I think that as we go through, though, the appeal points are narrowing, and so parties are able to remove their appeal points as we go through, and that's likely to continue to happen right the way up until mediation actually starts. But there's a number of those pre-steps, so after we do the analysis, we have to circulate a bunch of that work, and then that gives the parties an opportunity to say, actually, the appeal point we were seeking is no longer valid due to the higher level documents.
Is this a public forum or is this in closed door? Mediation.
Closed door.
Closed door, yeah.
Nobody can talk about what's talked about at mediation. It's like Fight Club.
Thank you. Nickel?
Yeah, so given that timetable, this has been a long and torturous road, are we looking at a possible completion by, say, August this year or not?
Wishing makes it so. Well, that would be lovely. I'm hesitant to make promises and not deliver, and we are beholden to the court. Judge Borthwick has also been very clear that she won't sign off on any orders until the completion of the mediation. And we know we're going to be heading into a hearing after mediation on some of the matters that won't be resolved. So with regards to Meridian and some of the YR related matters, they're going straight to a hearing. So August would be lovely, but possibly ambitious. Mediation will definitely be done by then, but whether the whole thing is locked.
Peter?
I think, Mr Chairman, it's quite a concern, isn't it, in the timeframes? And I think ahead to that plan change for limit setting, and how, we talk about a generation to get back to where we want to go. Well, that's going to be cut somewhat short, isn't it, by the time we get things enacted?
So through you, Mr Chair, one positive thing to remember is that we won't be going through this process again, because the freshwater planning process is significantly different to the Schedule 1 process that we're currently going through, and with the intention to be speedier. So it should be all wrapped up in less than 2 years is the FPP process, from start to finish, from notification to final completion.
You think that would be the longest?
That would be the absolute longest, yeah. But I can talk to you more about the freshwater planning process further down the line.
So, Mr Chairman, I'll try and ask a high level question because I'm a little bit conflicted here because of what you raised with allocation of water and water takes. We've had the councillors that were assisting you in some of the direction have had some first go at the some of the background work, but some of the topics you mentioned, we haven't covered that off in that subcommittee. When are you going to do that?
We've got a subcommittee penciled in for 2 weeks or 3 weeks' time, I believe, and it will be then that we'll be traversing the first lot of mediation topics with you in detail.
You can work down through the...
Yeah.
Thank you, Liz.
So that's the proposed Southland Water and Land Plan. Things are cracking on with regard to the plan change as well. We're already working obviously very closely with the People, Water and Land Programme, but in terms of actual plan change approach, Emma from my team is leading off on that, and there's really close interplay there with what the regional forum plan is for the next 18 months. So making sure that the two things are dovetailing together is high on our list of things at the moment. We've been working obviously on the NPSFM and continue to do so, what it means and how we're going to implement it, and there's been a couple of workshops. We've had one with science and we've done a couple of gap analyses around what the new model looks like compared to what we were working to, and so we're intending to do much more joined up work with science on that as we move forwards. The coastal plan is trucking along. We've got remaining policy and science work currently underway for a number of points, and that's due to be, those elements are due to be completed by the middle of the year. Provision drafting is also underway. The Southern Economics Project, a workshop was held with yourselves and to discuss the model and the scenario testing, and know I had some really good feedback, so hopefully you all found that useful. It's now being used by the regional forum and will continue to be from a scenario testing perspective. LiDAR flying has commenced. We're working with the TAs on the plan for how we're going to make use of LiDAR and what we're going to be using it for and how we want to do that in a joined up and efficient way. And the only other thing I would like to just point to is the Regional Land Transport Plan draft was approved by the Regional Transport Committee last week for consultation, and that consultation is due to commence on the 5th of March, due to be notified on the 5th of March. And I just wanted to say as well, a big thank you to those of you who were able to attend on Monday, the Joint Councillor Workshop. I thought it was a lot of work from our end, and I was really pleased that we had such a good turnout and such good active participation. Give a really good steer for staff to know where to from here. So yes, just wanted to say thank you on that. So again, happy to answer any questions about the report.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just on briefly on the joint council meeting, I found that fantastic. Just if you could pass through to your other colleagues, other planners, my thanks for their input. Very, very valuable. It was like to me, it was like the Fantastic Four that were up the front there. You may well have been on that day as, a really good starting point.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. So just a little bit comes on from what we did on Monday, and I know you covered some of those points, but the one I'm about to ask a question on, and that's a local government New Zealand sent out a policy note, and it's just clarification of what that might mean, if we can interpret what that might mean. And it just says, a ministerial oversight group will work through the policy details needed to progress the NBA. And obviously you know what the NBA is. It's not basketball. It's exposure draft and supporting consultation material, right? When it's the third dot, providing for a single planning document for each region, including the coastal marine area under the NBA, consolidating over 100 existing regional and district planning documents into about 14, provisionally called natural and built environment plans. So we're going through a lot of pain and anguish and work to do water and land plans, and obviously we've got through some part of the process to do a coastal plan. Could we find that Wellington runs over us again with a document on our behalf? At what stage are we going to be likely to see something tangible from what these 14 regional documents are going to look like? Or is it way too early to sort of comment, but it shows some sort of degree of interest from Wellington to help us out?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Chair, just I'm sure Wilma and Rob might want to jump in as well, but there's no indication they're going to be documents on our behalf. They will be our documents, and it's beholden upon us to put the 14 documents are going to be regional led. They'll have to include all of the territorial authorities, rules and regulatory elements. And so it's highly likely that a lot of the work we've been doing jointly thus far over the last few years is going to be really great, because we're able to put those things together much easier than a lot of other regions who don't work as closely as we do. And I also, in terms of templating, or if MFE or the government are going to come at us with kind of structural templates, we've already got an element of that with the National Planning Standards framework, and early indications are they're not planning on changing those. So we're in pretty good shape to know what they're looking for, and there was early indications within the National Planning Standards that they did want us to join up more. So yeah, I'm not nervous about the fact that they might come over top, but certainly I'm very keen to see what's in those early the exposure drafts when they come, probably around Easter, because it will give us a good indication of what's to come.
Through your chair, just to add on to what Lucy's saying, that we understand there's going to be some transitional provisions. How do we transition from our present planning work into this new plan, the new NBA? There's a team in MFE that are working on that right now, expecting some guidance on that in the next a couple of months. So we will need to think carefully about how do we transition. We can't obviously stop. We've got to keep on our work program, but we'll just look at actually what does that transition look like. It's a bit of uncertainty, it'd be fair to say.
that's pretty much covered.
So Rob has covered quite a bit of it, but the theory is not bad, but it's just an extra whole lot of work for all the councils to have things that are more consistent, more like a one plan where that cascade all works together. And like it'll be the first time the district plans have had to be linked up, and in the past they were always supposed to give effect, but one of the concepts is for users, you'll have a one-stop shop basically where you can go to the one document and find what you want. Great theory, but it does put huge cost and stress on a system that's already got a lot going on with plan changes as well. But yeah, I don't think there's going to be another major change over the top. But you're going from every district to at least every region. 14 doesn't quite line up with 16, but that's that's the basis of it.
Can I just add that you prompted me to remember something else that's in the National Planning Standards, which did kind of point us to this point, was we had to have all of our documents linked electronically. There's electronic standards that exist within the National Planning Standards, which mean that all of our plans would have had to be in a similar format, enough that from a user's perspective, they could search all of the documents as if they were one. So that move alone, we were on the track to enable us to do that already. So the Strategic Planning Act that's likely to come and the spatial planning requirements that will be new, we're in good shape because we've been doing so much more spatial planning anyway. So yeah, I'm not underestimating the scale of the challenge, but I certainly don't feel nervous about it. There's positives for where we are in terms of having worked closely with our partners.
Thanks, Lucy. What else have we got there to cover?
That's me.
Very much it.
That's it. That's enough for me. Nobody's got any more
Thank you. Would somebody like to move that recommendation?
I can move that, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Alan. Second it. Peter. Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
That's carried. Right, we'll move on to next item. It's the Fiordland Marine Guardians. I'd like to invite you to the table, thanks. Here we go. Ellie, Rebecca, good. The floor is yours. Yes.
Thank you very much for inviting us along today. We're really pleased to be here. It's we have shared interests in the Fiordland Marine area, and we've had a very busy work program lately. So it would be really nice to have the opportunity to update you about what it is that we do and some of the issues that we're currently grappling with in the Fiordland Marine area that may be of relevance to the work that you do. So my name is Rebecca McLeod, and I'm the privilege of chairing the Fiordland Marine Guardians. And today I've got with me Ellie Ballantyne, who's one of our guardians, who will be doing a bit of the presentation as well. And then we've got Peter Young, Jerry Exel, and Stuart Bold, who I'm sure we've all met many times before. You probably spend more time in these chambers than anybody. So our annual report was circulated in the board papers, but I do have hard copies if anyone would like one. Otherwise they're just going to sit in my office, so please help us out into one of those if you'd like. So it's been 16 years now since the Fiordland Marine Management Act was passed in 2005, and I guess the story of the Fiordland Marine Guardians extends well before that time, and it continues now and will continue for many years to come, we hope. So I guess we should begin by just acknowledging how incredibly special the Fiordland Marine area is, and not just in its physical beauty, but also the wildlife, the biology of the system, the intrinsic values, and I think most importantly the community of the people that live and work and play in Fiordland. And it's one of those places that as many people held very dear to their hearts. So we have a very engaged community all wanting to ensure that Fiordland remains just as special for the future as it is now. So I can change. Sorry, you might need to go over there. Can be my right hand man. So just where the Fiordland Marine Guardians and the Fiordland Marine Conservation Strategy all began, way back in the good old days, it was perceived that such a vast area as Fiordland had an endless supply of fish, and so it was the heyday back in the 1950s or so. Around 4,000 tonne of crayfish were harvested from the Fiordland Marine area per annum, and that compares with about 1,000 tonnes in the current day. So by 1970, this fishery had really ramped up, and there were some 230 vessels plying the Fiordland waters fishing for crayfish. And nowadays we have, well, I think around sort of maximum about 70 vessels in there fishing for crays. So, and it got kind of real in the 1980s and 1990s when it became apparent that in fact these weren't infinite stocks, and sustainability concerns really came to the fore. So active measures were taken to reduce the take of crayfish and other fish stocks around that time. Is this working now? Oh, there we go. So, oh, that's gone too far now. There we go. Excellent. Thank you. So from the 1990s, the community began to take a more sort of holistic view of the fisheries and other environmental concerns. And a group led originally by fishers, but joined by other interested parties, started to form in the early 90s. And by 95, the Guardians of Fiordland Fisheries had been formed. So I guess it was a very long process that started back in the 90s, and I guess culminated with the Fiordland Marine Management Act being passed in 2005. There was a long period of information gathering and analysis, a really important period of building trust between all of these parties, and also a lot of negotiation based upon that foundation of trust. So nowadays, the management of the Fiordland Marine area is widely regarded as sort of the leading example of an integrated management scheme in New Zealand and actually around the world. So we're very proud of the work that we do. That's a bit of a delay on it, isn't it? So back in the early days when the group got together, there were representatives from lots of different stakeholder groups that came together, from Ngāi Tahu, from environmental interests, recreational fishing interests, commercial sector, the charter and tourism industry, and from the community. And it was sort of regarded as this, it's called the egg model for how it all used to work. So those parties were the yolk of the egg, and then around in the white of the egg were all of the supporting agencies that came in and provided the grunt work to get to sort of progress the vision that the guardians in the middle, or the pre-guardians in the middle of the yolk of that egg had. And once the Fiordland Marine Management Act came into force, the model changed slightly so that those in the yolk of the egg, who are now us guardians, in the egg yolk there, we're appointed by the Minister for the Environment, but we're not here to represent any particular stakeholder groups. So each of us individually bring our skills and experience and knowledge about the Fiordland Marine area and sort of our history in that place, and we bring that into the room, and our job is to look after Fiordland. We're not there to advocate for any particular sector. So there are up to 8 guardians at a time that get appointed by the Minister for the Environment, and one of these is nominated by Ngāi Tahu, who is currently, that position is filled by Stuart Bull. So we have a very diverse range of interests and experience, ranging from scientists to skilled communicators. Ali brings a depth of knowledge around the Resource Management Act. We've got fishers, we've got recreational fishermen, all sorts that are on our group. So collectively, we think we're a pretty awesome resource of knowledge and skills relating to the Fiordland Marine area. A powerful combination. So back in the beginnings, when the Fiordland Marine Guardians came together, one of the first jobs was to set a vision for the Fiordland Marine area. And this vision remains just as relevant and central to the work we do today as it was back then. So the vision was that the quality of Fiordland's marine environment and fisheries, including the wider fishery experience, be maintained or improved for future generations to use and enjoy. So you can see that this is about more than just fisheries sustainability. It reflects the importance of matters like biodiversity, biosecurity, and access, and also the intrinsic values of this special place. Okay, so very early in the process, this core set of themes and philosophies were defined, which guide the way that we work together, and they're grounded in tikanga Māori. So the central theme is around kaitiakitanga, or expressing a sense of guardianship over the area. We bring parties together with a real willingness to share knowledge and information. We discuss issues, not positions. So everybody leaves their baggage and agendas at the door, and we come in and we discuss the matters at hand rather than coming in with a stake in the ground. And we also have this gifts and gains philosophy that was developed in the early days, which was pretty groundbreaking at the time. And that was the basis for many of the negotiations that were done before the Fiordland Marine Management package was designed. So all of that developed this really strong foundation for collaboration, and just looking at the way that it works today, we meet on a quarterly basis, and we meet generally here in the council chambers or up in Te Anau, and we bring together the Guardians, but also all of the agencies that we work with send their representatives to our meetings regularly. So that includes the Department of Conservation, a number of staff from Environment Southland, and also MFE and various DOC and MPI, which is Fisheries New Zealand and Biosecurity New Zealand as well. So it's a really great forum to bring all of these people together and get this sort of cross-agency collaboration working with a really clear sort of direction for how we want to work together. And again, I think that's quite a unique model as well around New Zealand. So the Fiordland Marine Management Act. So this is a special bit of legislation, maybe if you go back one, that was developed because many of the measures that were came up with to look after Fiordland did not fit into existing legislation at the time. So the Fiordland Marine Management Act was designed to package all of these measures together, and at the same time there were a number of changes within existing legislation that went along with the Fiordland Marine Management Act, particularly in the areas of fisheries under the Fisheries Act. So it's sort of a package of changes which I'll talk about in a couple of slides' time. But one of the most important parts of this was to establish the Guardians as a group and define our role. So these are the kinds of things that we're involved with. We obtain and share information and work as sort of a central hub for sharing knowledge and information among the various agencies and council that have an interest in the Fiordland Marine area. We spend a lot of time doing risk analysis and looking out sort of over a 10, 20-year horizon and figuring out how we can mitigate risks, and then working with agencies in the community to come up with innovative solutions to mitigate those risks. And we provide advice and recommendations to not just the agencies but also up to the ministers. So we have the ear of the Minister for the Environment who appoints us, but also the Minister of Conservation, and we speak regularly with the Minister of Biosecurity as well. I think that's all I need to say on that one. But in terms of what we do with Environment Southland, I'd just like to say we really just have such a strong relationship with Environment Southland, and we're really grateful for the support that Council provides us from sort of a logistic and administrative perspective in terms of helping us to have our meetings, for example, and facilitating those, but also in all of these different areas. So we have really good trusting relationships with staff that are in these different areas of Council, and we hope that we bring as much benefit to them as they do to us. I'll just give you a quick overview of the management package for Fiordland. I'm sure you're already aware of this, but just so we're all on the same page. So when the package was put together, and I call it a package because it's not just the Act, but also those fisheries regulations that I was talking about earlier. These were the different measures in that package that were created. So 10 marine reserves, China shops, which are areas that have fragile or representative communities underwater that are thought to be vulnerable to things like anchor damage, for example. There was an establishment of the habitat lines, which defines the inner fjords from the open coast, and these are biologically or ecologically very different areas, and so you have very different fisheries, for example, and different risks and levels of vulnerability. So a lot of the work we do, the rules are defined around where you are in relation to those habitat lines. For example, commercial fishing was excluded from inside all of those habitat lines, which are at the entrances to the fjords. There was also a massive reduction in the recreational bag limits, and these no accumulation rules were brought in, which means that fishers can only leave Fiordland with 1 day's catch. They can't go in there for 10 days and bring out 10 days worth of their bag limit, for example, which used to be the way that it was done in there. And there were also a number of temporary fisheries closures that were put in place. But since then, we've been working really hard on coordinating activities among the agencies, and we've also, continuing to design these innovative solutions, such as the pathway management plan. And Fiordland was the first one off the blocks there in New Zealand for launching a marine pathway plan, which deals with biosecurity. So leading the way, Fiordland continues to lead the way as it did back in the 90s. However, the job is far from done. It's a really dynamic space in Fiordland, and until COVID came along, we were seeing this incredible upsurge of visitor numbers into Fiordland, which brings with it a wide array of challenges. Nowadays, we still actually, even in the COVID world or post-COVID or wherever we're at, we're seeing an intense interest from domestic tourists to go into Fiordland, and they probably have quite different requirements from your international tourists in terms of their appetite for going fishing, for example. So there's a couple of things that we'd like to just cover today, and Ali's going to help me with this bit. We'd like to talk particularly about the risks that are posed from our view by the transitional period between these coastal plans, and talk to you about how we might mitigate that risk. And we'd also like to touch on marine biosecurity. So we'll kick off with Ali.
Good morning, everyone. So hopefully you've received the letter that Rebecca wrote to Nicole. Just kind of giving a little background to some of the concerns that we have that we want to talk to you about today. And as Rebecca says, not only have we seen an influx in a lot of tourists coming into Fiordland, but also a big increase in the applications for surface water activities, and staff reported at our meeting yesterday that that's up to 30% of all consent applications are for surface water activities. So that's of concern, and particularly at the moment when we are transitioning between two plans. People are applying for variations to consents. They want bigger vessels, higher levels of activity, larger barges and all this sort of thing. So I think people are seeing that they want to get in now before they see changes come, which may well be more restrictive with the new plan. So that is of real concern to us, of course. So, you know, I think there's a bit of a gold rush going on, and it's what we can do about that at the moment, which is of concern. So, as you're probably aware, and I went through the coastal plan years ago, there's very limited scope to oppose any expansion under the current plan, and being able to really effectively deal with the cumulative effects of surface water activities. So, from what we can see, probably the only thing maybe we can hang our hat on would be the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement, which says that adverse effects on outstanding natural character are to be avoided. So I think that this is something that may enable Council the ability to take a precautionary approach in the meantime. And we heard yesterday that one particular application, the staff recommendation is actually to decline it because they feel it does not comply with the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement. So that gives us some comfort, I think. We're not asking for people to stop doing things over there, but we just, at the moment, we've not been able to deal with cumulative effects. We just feel by the time the new plan comes into place, the horse may well have bolted. So, as per our letter, we'd really like to see if the council, in any way, you could accelerate the progress of the new coastal plan, and we realise the resourcing issues that you have, because it's pretty much driven from the fees that you receive from the cruise ship fund, and of course there's nothing coming in at the moment, and I know the pressures that council are under, but the sooner we can get the new plan through the system and in place, the better. And as I say, just to take our precautionary approach, so also recommending that council look at the limits on these on the consent durations. We've suggested in our letters something like 15 years, which we think is reasonably generous, but there was actually an application that's gone through that the Guardians submitted on for Offspring Travel Limited, and the staff recommendation of that is actually for a 12-year consent. So something like that seems like a long time, and we recognise that the consenting process is expensive for the surface water activity consent holders, but something around that amount of time, 10 or 12 years, would certainly give us a bit more comfort in the meantime. We're also going to be submitting on the council's long-term plan about, it's been suggested to us in discussions with staff that an independent monitoring report to ascertain what the perceptions are of natural character in the Fiordland marine area would be of help to inform council's decision-making process. But we're also aware of the work that Vicky Froud is doing for council, and her the work that you've commissioned from her on the Fiordland vessel carrying capacity issues. So an assessment of perceptions of natural character is something that could well fit into the work that Vicky's doing as well, just to enable better decision making under the new plan. So that's kind of where we are. We are feeling frustrated at the moment. I'm sure, like all of us, you hold those remoteness and wilderness values in Fiordland really close to your heart. But there's just a huge influx of people. Apparently, during the weekend of Waitangi weekend, there was just vessels coming from Canterbury, Otago. The place was just so busy. And not only those sort of concerns, but also the effects that this is having on biosecurity and so on. It's such a remote place, it's really hard to get compliance around with things like the Clean Vessel Pass and so on. So people have discovered Fiordland. Every time something's on TV, a fishing program, I think a whole lot more people want to go there. So thank you for listening to our concerns.
Thank you, Ellie. And the second challenge that we wanted to touch on was around marine biosecurity, and we're really appreciative of the work that Council has done in this space, particularly dealing with the invasive seaweed undaria, which is, as far as we know, the only marine pest in the Fiordland marine area at the moment. Environment Southland was very bold in leading the way with establishing the Fiordland Marine Pest Pathway Management Plan. we get a lot of feedback from the community about how important marine biosecurity is to them, and a lot of distress expressed by regular users of Fiordland about how the Undaria situation is tracking in there at the moment. It's becoming a very visible problem in Breaksea Sound, and the thought of that spreading throughout the rest of Fiordland is not a nice one to consider. So this is a challenging pest because it is so common now around the New Zealand coastline, so getting support from at a national level to deal with Undaria has been really difficult. However, we've just been working really hard to advocate strongly for the biodiversity of Fiordland and what we think is at risk if this pest is allowed to spread. So we thank the council for their support in that work and for the investment that has been put into that area so far. We have been working recently and linking up with other regional councils around New Zealand who have got a developing pathways approaches. I think originally we had a lot of conversations with Rob about frustrations with Fiordland establishing, Fiordland pathways plan, but really the problem exists outside of Fiordland. So we're trying to control everything that goes on outside Fiordland with a plan designed specifically for Fiordland. And the power of this approach really comes if other neighbouring ports and regions are on board with what we're doing. So the vulnerability still exists if you just have the Fiordland pathways plan happening in isolation, and meanwhile Otago Harbour's getting riddled with pests and Canterbury's not doing much about their marine pests. That really makes Fiordland more and more vulnerable. So there's some really promising work happening in the top of the north with regional councils forming collectives. Instead of waiting for a national approach to come from central government, they're basically establishing pathways plans and then clipping on neighbouring regions. And they're developing some really exciting tools to share information about individual vessels and their movements, and enabling them to just be a lot more proactive in the communications that they send out and the directives that they take. So this is also happening at the top of the South Island, and we think that there's real potential for this to happen in the bottom of the South with the Otago Regional Council and Environment Canterbury, for example. So we will continue to talk with those, we'll start to talk with Otago and Canterbury, and we're keeping your staff informed of those discussions as well. But it shouldn't be that you have to foot the bill for all of this work. I mean, those councils should really be stepping up and joining you and supporting you in the work that you're doing here in Fiordland. So I guess the concerns that we still have around marine biosecurity in Fiordland is firstly, the compliance side of things is becoming a really big job. This last summer's been really busy for marine biosecurity compliance with a number of breaches of the pathways plan, and also with vessels turning up in Fiordland riddled with nasties on their hulls. So that's something that really does need to be adequately resourced, whilst acknowledging the challenges of doing that work in such a remote place. We do obviously have really nice cooperative approaches with the other agencies, so there is support there from the Department of Conservation and from Biosecurity New Zealand as well to sort of be leveraged against. But I guess the thing that is of most concern to us is that there are all these rules and regulations in place now to stop marine pests from getting into Fiordland, but it's really not easy for operators to comply with those rules. And the number one reason for that is that the facilities in Bluff to take your vessel out of the water and clean it are just simply not fit for purpose. We've had a number of workshops and meetings, and we're aware of work that's being done at the moment between Environment Southland and the Invercargill City Council and the Southland District Council and Bluff Community Board to develop a new haul-out facility that can deal with small and medium-sized vessels in Bluff, and that's going to be designed around the existing yacht club ramp. So the ramp will be strengthened so that it can take bigger vessels out, and a safe space set up so that people can work on their vessels. But for those bigger vessels that do need to come out on the synchro lift at Southport, there's such a long queue to get onto that facility and so many operational challenges that it's just very, very difficult for vessels to comply with the rules to go into Fiordland. So as shareholders in Southport, we're really hoping that that is something that Environment Southern will be able to put some pressure on. We need to have the facilities in place to make it easy for people to comply. I think I've skipped ahead and gone to my next slide actually, to our advice, haven't I? If you can hit the button. So, is there anything there I haven't covered? There is potential to consider expanding the geographical scope of this pathways plan. We obviously are looking after the Fiordland Marine area, but many of us have also strong connections to Wakiura, and we're seeing Undaria spread around Wakiura at the moment, and it's unnecessary, and that is just as special a place as Fiordland. So we're not just worried about Undaria. Of course, there are a number of other far nastier pests that are making their way south that we need to protect these special places from. If we could expand the scope of the Fiordland Pathways Plan, it would probably end up strengthening the Fiordland part of that plan because it would increase the awareness of people's need to comply with, ways to prevent themselves from unwittingly carrying pests into these special parts of the country. I think I've covered everything else on that slide, but they were the main issues that we wanted to bring to your attention, and be really interested to get your thoughts on them. And we're going to be here for morning tea, I believe, a cup of tea. So thank you for having us, and we'd be really keen to discuss further any issues that you'd like to raise or questions you have. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Questions? Peter?
Thanks very much.
I'll throw a dart.
Surface water activities in regards to Milford opportunities. Obviously, the big focus is the corridor going in. They talk about the tidal wash of the traffic going in and out. There's a lot of net capacity. Do you see that bringing more people in there? So the requirement for more vessels in there to service those people, is that a concern for the future?
Yeah, it is, and we all recognise that up until recently, Sound from a lot of those buses, the perception of being there, it's like a really busy place. Tourists often don't see it that way, but and I think that those are some of the issues that the Milford Opportunities Project are dealing with. I guess the concern we have is if you put some limits around Milford, you're just going to see a flow-over effect into the sounds further down, because the demand to visit Fiordland will not go away. So the sort of view in the past has been, we recognise what's happening, let's get the bulk of people there to Milford. Most of those people are having a really nice experience, perhaps not what us New Zealanders like, but they're quite happy with it. But having them all there gives us the ability to protect those other places and look after those values that we all cherish.
Do you think, just further onto that, do you think it's really important now that we use this period, I could call it a slack tide period, to get all this body of work done for the future in case we see, well, I believe we're going to see another explosion, another lift up from where we were pre-COVID. Do you think that's really important to do all this work now?
Absolutely, and that's why it's quite timely that the Milford Opportunities Project is happening at the moment. Yeah, we've got a chance to kind of reset what we do, and it's...
The thing is, there's absolutely no limits to Doubtful's the only fjord or Doubtful complex that has a limit set on it. The rest of it, virtually anyone that applies for something, there's no grounds to turn them away. That's the thing that we really struggle with. So virtually at the moment, open Slava, and people realising this and thinking that change is coming. It's one of the flood of applications now. You see that's the main fear. There's nothing at the moment. Apart from the Doubtful Sound complex, there's nothing in the plane that you can really turn anyone down.
We've still got a park plan that's waiting to be refreshed, haven't we?
The park plan also doesn't have any sway over what happens on the water. It's completely separate. So virtually at the moment it's open Slava, and that's our fear.
Yeah, and I'd add to that as well that we've really noticed over the last 10 years a massive increase in the number of visitors to the southern fjords. And so that was an area that was sort of protected by remoteness. But that's no longer the case. People are more affluent, they have bigger vessels, they have better means, easier means to get in there, and they want that wilderness experience. And so it's quickly becoming not a wilderness experience with the buzz of activity in there. So a vulnerable place that we don't want it to turn into another Milford. So yeah.
It's interesting, I'm sorry about this, but on my tangy day, when we went down to Bluff, and I go down there and I see all the triple axle trailers now, 8 metre, 9 metre image boats. It's not the single axle trailers it used to be 25 years ago. And people are more affluent, they've got these bigger boats, bigger crews on these boats.
I've got boat trailers in Milford and working in the weekend.
Yeah.
It's huge, even just on the road itself, you can't the traffic problem as well.
What you talk about is recreational vessels.
Next.
It just shows that people wanting to go there. Now I have a problem with, I've got high numbers of kingfish and bluefin tuna turning up in Fiordland, so that's another big attractor for people wanting to go there.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, we're undisciplined.
No problem. Good questions. Yeah, no, great discussion. Medium Lloyd, or small Lloyd is next.
I like him, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. But first of all, there's two things I want to say, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you for coming in. I found the information you sent to us very helpful, and the letter was a good stimulus. So I really appreciate you coming in and having the opportunity to read the annual report. It refreshed a lot of the stuff we've done over the last few years. Mr. Chairman, can I suggest, because of the matters that have been raised by the Guardians today, that we have a workshop to go through? There's a lot of detail here and a lot of stuff I'd like to talk to staff about a work program and how we can align. And I think what today is really about understanding, we can really only ask matters of clarification, but some of the detail that sits behind here, I think we really need to have some own time and actually work that through and come back. We've obviously got a good dialogue, whether it's through official channels at a high level or through staff. We need to understand what the Guardians are saying to us and actually take that through to a point where we can see a pathway forward. I totally get the concern that is being expressed, and some of the pictures up there are very graphic, and you go, how does this happen in a world today? So we need that time to refresh ourselves and move this forward. Regardless of LTPs and restraints, there's a bigger game here.
No, thank you, Lord. No, having read right through your annual report too, no, there's some real issues, well, understanding some real issues in there, and certainly appreciate it in presentation today, but no, take that on. Wilma, look at
Sounds like
putting something together to workshop
do that.
and respond to that letter too that we received. Very important. So, yeah, thank you for that. Lloyd, the big file.
The big one, yeah, thank you for that. I was a couple of things there. I think the COVID recession is probably a good opportunity to make sure we've got good baseline data on what the reduced effect of perhaps the Milford or overseas boats and things have on Milford, so or Fiordland in general. We're sort of down to one cruise ship. The problem with the wilderness experience is that any response to that would have to be selfish, because you're sitting on your own blot in the landscape when you're criticising the accumulation of other stuff, and if you can see them, they can see you. So it's sort of, is it first come, first served, or whatever. And from my experience in and out of the fjords, people aren't minded too much with seeing the odd fishing boat or the odd cruise ship or something come past. So it's very difficult to set a baseline as to what a good number of tourists or tourist vessels would be. When any response to that would have to be selfish, because you're part of the problem if you were in there looking at other places, they can certainly see you.
So yes, that's right, Lloyd, and I think that's what will be of value to councillors, that work that Vicky Froud's doing about assessing the carrying capacity of Fiordland.
Stuart?
Yeah, Dave, yeah, one of the issues with the more people coming there is it is a visual effect, but it's also how many of them dropping a line over the side.
Yeah.
And so the fisheries and the impact on the fisheries and such. So
That's
another concern, and what's happening under the surface of the water. But I just wanted to touch on what can Environment Southland do, or could you think about consideration of what is it that you might be able to do to help in the haul-out facilities in Southport? My understanding is that Environment Southland, the majority shareholder in Southport, we're getting incursions coming into Fiordland. We're dealing with Untitled at the moment, but it could be more. The facilities that are in Southport at the moment, as I said, they're not suitable. The ones that can get up are not compliant, even when they can get onto them. And we're talking about doing up the recreational, the yachties, haul-out facility to accommodate boats, but it's still, everything's still getting washed back into the tide at the moment. And so that's a major concern, because even the synchro lift, they're being, as I understand, they're non-compliant. Everything's meant to be retained, but it's all just getting washed back into the tide. And so we're just going, so that old washing machine was going round and round and round in circles and making no headway. So I just ask that you might, if there is something that you can influence in that arena, please do.
Thanks, Stuart. I've got a meeting with the chair of Southport later this morning, so maybe I should bring it up.
We might recall that, I think we were in a conversation together where Southport basically said, no, they've got land available at the, I'll say the southwest corner of the properties there, and they're not using it, but they're saying, no, we're not going to utilise that for anything else, because we may need it later on for container storage and such like. So they're sitting on lands that could be perhaps suitable to build a purpose-built haul out, but there's not even any consideration of coming to the party, I guess. So.
Thank you. Alan?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just had sort of two quick questions. The first one really, and I think you sort of answered about where those boats were coming from that you alluded to, where there was a large number of vessels appearing in Fiordland. So largely they are domestic boats overland, over the hill and into Fiordland, and they are going further than just Milford.
Yes, that's right.
The more detailed question or concern I have is really that you talk about the pathway program. So who are currently the funders of the pathway? That's really an attempt, isn't it, to remove the underiums. So who has been funding that?
So the pathway initiative is owned by council. So your biosecurity team here are facilitating that, but it has got the support of the other agencies. I don't know if they contribute any funds to it. So all of the administrative side of things and the compliance is done by Environment Southland, and the focus of that program is aimed solely on keeping pests out of Fiordland. So it's around putting the onus on vessel operators to educate themselves and ensure that they are not taking pests in on their hulls or on their fishing gear or in the water inside their vessels. And they are required to obtain a clean vessel pass through the Environment Southland website and have that on them that expires every year. So that gives the council a way of communicating directly with vessel operators, which is a real step forward. Before that, we didn't have any way of knowing even who was in there or how many vessels, whatever. Then there's the program of Untitled Control, which is a joint program between the Ministry for Primary Industries, Department of Conservation and Environment Southland, and I believe it's a third share. And so that is a physical removal program where they go in once a month and monitor for Undaria extent, and they physically remove it from certain key areas. But there's been a lot of work going on with trying to rejuvenate that program and fund it appropriately so that it can be more effective. At the moment, we're on a bit of a hiding to nowhere. It's not sufficient to contain Undaria within Breaksea Sound. So there is an application that's in through Kaimahi for Nature, which we're expecting a decision on imminently, and that is to train and employ locals to go in and work as biosecurity surveillance technicians underwater to remove Undaria. And the goal of that is to reduce the biomass so that it's not creating as many spores, therefore it's limiting the spread, so it's trying to kind of hold it, whilst in the meantime the Ministry for Primary Industries are working on developing some tools that could eventually eradicate. It's currently not possible in existing technology, so two different work streams going on.
So the Clean Boat program.
As part of the council workshop to work through because our plan. Some of the detail and just how it works, and also just as Rebecca touched on, my hobby horse is a need for a national plan. Until we can get a proper national program, we're going to continue to get boats coming in from Tauranga or Northland or whatever that we can't control effectively. So really keen on this joined up approach with our neighbours, but we do need a pathway plan. And NPI finally resourcing that, but it's so that's great. But I think Rebecca touched on the our reality of how do we deal with Undaria. It's a single cell plant, so each plant produces thousands of spores. So we need a technology breakthrough for this. But the Kaimahi for Nature might give us some breathing space to actually significant investment of I think over $1 million per annum. So hopefully that might give us some breathing space. But huge challenges around how do we deal with that. So sorry, I jumped in. Second question.
I'm reasonably clear now. There's obviously multiple issues as far as where the threat is, but again, at the moment, I guess it's where the money comes from to try and halt the spread.
I'm well aware of the time, and you're waiting for a cup of tea, so we've got another meeting at 8:30, but I don't want to cut people off. But Nickel, you've got a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for coming in this morning, because it's actually highlighted a number of issues that we do need to address. The whole cleaning facility, I thought we had something happening at Bluff. Apparently it hasn't for the small to medium sized ones, so that's certainly something I'm keen for us to follow up on. And I guess the Fiordland area is the jewel in the crown for it's such a stunning place that everybody wants to visit it, but we have to have it done in a sustainable way. Interesting to hear that the volume's dropped off to Milford. You've got New Zealanders wanting to see their own country and wanting to go further, and it's good that you're highlighting some of those issues. The natural character issue after the King Salmon case is obviously something that will be a focus in the coastal plan. You seem to have the impression it's stalled. That's not really the case. We have sort of offered to Otago and Canterbury to perhaps join with us. Each area will have their own specific things, and obviously Fiordland is something that is different, and we'd have to do our own work. But I've always felt that the boundary doesn't change with a line on the surface. So to get a bit of consistency in some of even the pathways type things, having those conversations, I think will be quite beneficial going forward. But yes, but again, there's things we can't progress too much further at this stage, and I know we want to have a cup of tea and a social time, but thank you for coming in this morning. It's been valuable and good to highlight some of these issues.
Thank you. Lyndall's got a very quick question.
It is a very specifically quick question. Kia ora, first of all. Just wondering if you have to hand some figures in your head perhaps around the number of vessels that require haul out that would use the synchro lift.
On a per annum basis, I'd say, if Cray fleet's on 70 odd, whatever, you get double that. That reside in Bluff, coming and going.
What sort of percentage of vessels using haul out would you require for secret?
At the moment, most of them, because there's no alternative, but if you had that, if the other haul out facility was there, and you could use trailers and get the boats out of the way, 80% of those boats could go on a big trailer. They don't have to be on the same.
Just straddle lift, you're in
Yep, so the split might be around 80-20 if we had both facilities going.
Yeah.
That's really what I'm after.
Admittedly, like all those small boats, they like to go on the sheds and Bluff, but you don't necessarily have to. If you just want to go up there and do a scrub and paint, they don't. 80% of us wouldn't need to go on the same lift.
Yeah, thank you.
They can lift a couple of thousand tonne. Most of their boats are less than 50.
And the prime purpose, as I understand it, of the synchro lift is to service the vessels that belong to Southport, the tugs and what have you. So it's kind of a secondary thing to provide that service. So the other boats that we use have to fit in around the schedule. But there's real potential there to stimulate economic growth within Bluff. If you have a reliable facility, you can just imagine all of the different engineering firms and support services that could set up in Bluff that would come around. And you just look at these thriving hubs with similar facilities up in Nelson, for example. It just seems like a no-brainer really in terms of trying to get Bluff moving. It would be really beneficial. Yeah, they have to. Yeah.
You've got 6 to 8 week waiting list.
That's because that's the only facility.
Yes, unless you've got a problem.
Mr. Chairman, I'm being really, really polite, but I think we should move this on
Yes,
and move forward. So
Thank you.
without calling anything else, I'd say I'd like to move this recommendation that's in the paper.
Thank you so much. Seconder for that recommendation. Thanks, Nicole. All those in favour? Okay, it's carried. Thank you so much for coming in. It's been terrific, actually. We've ended up with a workshop out of it, and we're going to respond to your letter, so obviously, so no, thank you very much. It's been great. Yeah, I appreciate that, and we'll catch you with a cup of tea shortly. Yes. So we'll just the agenda. We still have an extraordinary and unaware of any extraordinary or urgent business.